What has always been important throughout the economic history of mankind? The most important thing has always been trade. Either the prosperity or the decline of a particular region depended on the location of ancient trade routes. Caravans traveled along the trade routes. People transported goods, ideas came with them, and information spread. However, epidemics also developed, but such challenges also made us stronger. The most famous trade route passed through the interior of the vast continent of Eurasia. Goods went from China to Europe and back, along with goods from Central Asia, Iran, and India. The Great Silk Road was the greatest in history. To this route, we owe the great states that flourished in ancient times and in the Middle Ages. But when it changed its route, and trade from China to Europe moved to the sea routes that were controlled by Europeans, the Great Silk Road lost its former importance. During the Soviet era, the interior of continental Eurasia was on the far periphery of major world events. The border with China was closed, and so was the border with the Muslim world. There were border guards everywhere and barbed wire. After the collapse of the USSR, each of its former republics, now newly independent states, faced the task of their own development. Naturally, these tasks were based on the opportunities that they had at their disposal. In general, the main thing was that all countries had to overcome the geographic isolation of the Central Asian region. This required roads, transport corridors for the movement of goods and people, and all that is called economic interaction. In the first decade of independence, each state, like ours, was engaged in solving current problems, including solving the problems of bottlenecks in the transport system. Kazakhstan built roads that allowed it to connect its individual regions with each other so as not to cross state borders. Also, much attention was paid to the development of other types of land communication routes. In particular, the Shar-Ust-Kamenogorsk Road was built so that trains from the east of Kazakhstan on the way to its central part did not have to cross the Russian border twice. For a similar purpose, another road was built from Kromtau to Altyn-Sarino in the Kostanay region. These were important local tasks on which the development of the country's economy and the connectivity of its regions with each other depended. Since the beginning of the development of the transport system in the country, the state has been thinking about transport corridors that would pass through Kazakhstan. We cannot limit ourselves only to local issues. We must always think strategically so that the solution of local issues helps the country's economy in the global perspective. In this situation, the president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, formulated an idea that would lead to Kazakhstan being able to realize its still very hypothetical potential, so that Kazakhstan could actually be at the crossroads of the main intracontinental roads of Eurasia, and so that goods and cargo would go not only from west to east, but also from north to south.
Новая экономическая политика Нурлу-Жол станет двигателем роста нашей экономики в ближайшие годы, кризисные годы мировой экономики. Только за счет строительства дорог будут созданы новые 200 тысяч рабочих мест. Мы обязаны создать такую транспортную сеть, чтобы от Астаны во все стороны расходились автомобильные, железнодорожные, авиационные магистрали, как вот от сердца идут артерии, как от солнца идут лучи, ускорятся, увеличатся грузопотоки, возрастут объемы транзита через страну. Наши граждане будут ездить современным качественным автомагистралям, смогут безопасно, быстро добираться в любой регион. Самое главное, все это останется на нашей земле, как богатство наших будущих поколений на сотни лет.
Of course, Kazakhstan did not have the opportunity to change the situation with infrastructure alone, because in many cases it was necessary to create it almost anew. Kazakhstan's resources were not sufficient to meet its ambitious goals. Therefore, the development of transport corridors was closely linked to the overall objectives of Kazakhstan's modernization. In fact, this was an integral part of the country's economic development concept. Therefore, Kazakhstan has implemented projects that could become elements of a future system of trade routes that would pass through our region. Among such elements, on the one hand, is the creation of the Kyorgos complex on the Kazakh-Chinese border. On the other hand are the constructions of the Aktau port first, and then the Koryk port on the Caspian Sea. Another important area is participation in the construction of a railway through Turkmenistan to Iran, and further to the ports of the Persian Gulf. But what is especially important is that Kazakhstan has significantly increased the scale of investment in its own transport infrastructure with this project. Of course, in 2008 and earlier, no one could guarantee that the transport corridor through Kazakhstan would ever work. It was an investment in the future. In the same way, the Nurly Zhol project was designed to improve the country's transport infrastructure, not only to develop links between the regions of Kazakhstan, but also to create a base for future international transport. Today we can see what impressive results the Nurly Zhol project has achieved since its launch by the first president of the country, Nursultan Nazarbayev. In 2013, there was a powerful breakthrough. Chinese President Xi Jinping came up with the idea of the One Belt, One Road project in Astana. China's participation in the reconstruction of the Great Silk Road under new conditions has dramatically changed the situation. Now Kazakhstan's efforts have received serious support.
Чтобы укрепить экономические связи, мы должны применять новые модели сотрудничества, сформировав экономическую полосу шелкового пути. Начать это мы могли бы со следующих конкретных шагов: постепенно расширить сферы взаимодействия и выходить на полномасштабное сотрудничество в регионе.
The implementation of the One Belt, One Road project has accelerated the process of creating transport corridors in our region. This was a classic example of synergy, when the efforts of different countries can change the situation for the better. And now, Kazakhstan has every reason to claim that all the efforts of the country over its 30 years of independence have created the conditions for the implementation of a global idea, the restoration of intracontinental trade, and the return of the Great Silk Road. Kazakhstan has a chance to be at the crossroads of trade routes in Central Eurasia.